Hey guys, it's Goosebumps Completionist, and today I'm bringing you another book versus episode video. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at Revenge of the Law Gnomes, the book versus the episode. Now, on the DVD case here, you see Go Eat Worms, but if you turn it over, Revenge of the Law Gnomes was included on this DVD release. So I'll be using this as a point of reference for the video. Now, Revenge of the Law Gnomes, I have some childhood nostalgia attached to this. I had the VHS rip copy that one of my neighbors gave me as a kid, and I watched this episode a lot. I gave the book a 2.5 out of 5 on my review. It was very disappointing to me, kind of annoying, kind of bland. Didn't like much about it. There were some elements I did like, but for the most part, it was just... And then the episode, I gave a 4.1 out of 5. And then that might seem kind of high to some people, but I think I get what this episode's trying to do. I think this episode's kind of charming. It's very reminiscent to something like Awesome Ants or the How I Got My Shrunken Head episode to me. And in a lot of regards, I think this is my, preferred version of the story, even though it does have its problems. It does. But I think this is, especially considering the show, a really good episode. So, yeah, this might seem like a runaway. If you look at the point difference, you might be able to predict what's going to happen. But in these videos, I still like to run it down the normal, what we always talk about. So what we like to talk about in these videos is comparing certain elements between the book and the episode and figuring out which one is better. So I usually like to start off with the characters. Which version of the story had better characters, or what character was better in what version of the story. Then we like to look at atmosphere. Which one had a better atmosphere? In this case, it's a summertime atmosphere, so I'm looking for that, right? The third thing we like to run down sometimes, if it's there, is aesthetics. Aesthetics are things that are different, like mechanisms, plot mechanisms, different features of monsters, you name it. And there are some aesthetic differences we can run down here in the comparison. So we will bring up aesthetics. Then we like to run down overall plot. Which one had a better overall plot? Then we like to run down the climax. Which one had a better climax? And then the ending. Okay? Which one had a better ending? So, let's start off the comparison by going over the main character, Joe. In the book, Joe is this dweebish jerk. He has a best friend named Moose, who we haven't talked about yet. And him and Moose are just big old dweebs. Joe has a gardening hobby. There's a lot more to him. He has a monologue in the book. He's kind of, I don't know. I kind of think he's more of a poser. He tries to act tough, but throughout the story, when things go wrong, he goes and cries to his mom and dad and everybody for help. So really, he's more of a, I don't know. He's just a perplexing character, really jerkish. You don't really like him or feel sympathy for him as what happens to him in the story. He gets grounded for things he didn't do, which is, understandable why he would be upset, but you just really don't feel any sympathy for him because he's just a big old jerk. So, yeah, Joe is just kind of a miss of a character. In the episode, he's more sympathetic. I think he's, slated to be a little bit younger. He's more soft-spoken or outspoken. He's picked on by his neighbor, Mr. McCall. He gets his stuff taken. He's just trying to be a kid. And, you got to deal with a neighbor jerk constantly taking your toys if it lands in his yard. And he doesn't really do anything wrong in the episode. There are some elements from his character, like him going to his parents for help, but there's more of an innocence to Joe than in the book. Joe just comes off, he's fronting being a jerk, and then he's really a scaredy cat. But here, he's just an innocent type of scaredy cat. You know what I mean? So if I had a preference for Joe, I actually prefer the episode's version of Joe. I just think that there's those negative qualities that were in the book that just aren't there. Yeah, there are some annoying things about Joe, like the "you gotta believe me" is briefly touched on here. But for the most part, Joe's a significant improvement to me in the episode. So I'll give Joe to the episode. Mindy She is the sister of Joe. In the book, Mindy's kind of annoying because she constantly falls for Joe's pranks, and you don't really get to see much of her personality here. As in the episode, she's snarky, and you kind of see this in the book as well. I'll give Mindy in the book some credit. There are some snarky moments that come out, but in the episode, she's way more snarky. She is the older sister of Joe, so she's kind of picks on him, but nothing too far. And she does play a more significant role near the end, like the book does. So, if I had a preference, I think I just like what was shown with Mindy more in the episode. I feel like I got to understand her character more. So yeah, I'll give the edge to Mindy here. Now, there are some characters that weren't featured in the episode, so we'll kind of run them down here. First off is the dog Buster. Buster's only in the book, so we'll give the edge to Buster in the book. Buster's a cute little dog. He gets into mischief in Mr. McCall's garden in the book, and, that kind of sets up some suspects on what can be going on in Mr. McCall's garden or going on in Joe's dad's garden. But it's like an obvious, the dog can't be doing it. But Buster's a cute little dog. It does offer this more warm-hearted element in the book that I kind of, I guess, appreciate. So, he's an alright character. I kind of wish he was in the episode, but Buster, by default, goes to the book. And then, of course, we have Joe's best friend, Moose. I think the writer of the episode, Charles Laser, when he was given the script or the plot of Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes and told to adapt it, he was like, this Moose character sucks. We don't need him in this episode. And really, you don't miss him in the episode. Honestly, if I had a preference for Moose, I'd give it to the episode just because he doesn't exist. But in the book, he's there, and he does get kind of better as the time goes on. But Moose is one of the cringiest Goosebumps characters ever. He's so full of himself, and he says really cringy things and does cringy things with Joe. He has this, I don't know, he has this vibe to him that just rubs me off completely from his character. I don't like him. So, yeah. Not much there. I guess if you want to be like technical, Moose goes to the book because he's not in the episode. But I prefer the episode. Let's be real. Then we could talk about, I guess, two really important characters in the story. We can talk about the neighbor, Mr. McCall. In the book, Mr. McCall isn't that big of a jerk compared to the episode. But Mr. McCall also has a kid named Moose, and he's more held back. He's like a retired military man. His passion is gardening, but he has a thing with Joe's dog Buster, and it's a lot of the things in the book is understandable with Mr. McCall. He kind of goes over the top, threatening to sue the family or threatening to get the police involved. He's very upfront about that, and he kind of creates this hostility in the book that's kind of engaging. But in the episode, Mr. McCall is not depicted to have a family. He doesn't have a wife. He doesn't have a kid. He's just this retired military man, and he's kind of stuck in his ways. And he's a really big jerk to Joe, taking his baseball, and he's making more harsher comments to Joe's dad on his own property, mind you. But Mr. McCall, the way he's depicted, I think the actor really sells it here. The way they ham up his character and go this whole military drill sergeant type of thing with him. And what they do with his character in the story is definitely more prolific than the book. And I think that twist at the end with his character kind of sends me over with him because there's some payoff to how big of a jerk he is. He got something coming to him, and it's kind of dark. So if you ask me which one do I prefer Mr. McCall in the episode. I really do. He's just better. Now, Joe's dad, however, in the episode, he is definitely a beta. With that whole rivalry that's kind of there to just make it tangible to the book, Joe's dad lets Mr. McCall just walk all over him in front of his kids. And it's really off. That element about him being a lawn ornament fanatic is kind of there, but you don't really get to see him go to Lawn Lovelies or any of that. She's not in this book, but I guess we can bring her up after this. Yeah, Joe's dad in the episode is just kind of there. He does punish Joe. He doesn't seem that big of a. He doesn't get as angry as he does in the book as the competition comes closer and the stress becomes bigger. But yeah, Joe's dad in the episode just doesn't do it for me. The book, he's definitely more engaging. You see his character kind of, like I said, progressively become more angry as the competition comes closer. And he's not really treated like a beta. He's like willing to stand up to Mr. McCall, make his own jokes. So I guess I'll give Joe's dad the edge in the book. Now, Lawn Lovely. Lawn Lovely isn't even mentioned in the episode. This is where she owns this shop where Joe's dad goes and buys these lawn gnomes. So she goes to the book. I think that Lawn Lovely character, the woman who runs it, is such a missed opportunity. I've seen so many people do rewrites of Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes and make her like this witch villain to actually give some sort of stakes and reason why lawn gnomes need revenge. But yeah, Lawn Lovely was, potential, but didn't really go anywhere. So by default, she goes to the book. And I guess we could talk about Joe's mom. She's definitely more of a character in the book. In the episode, she's like a cameo appearance. So she goes to the book here. Not much to talk about her, really. So that's basically all the characters, minus the villains, the lawn gnomes. Now, I know a lot of people love the lawn gnomes. It might be considered a fan favorite monster in Goosebumps. Look, I wore this hoodie because it has a lawn gnome on it. I do love me some lawn gnomes, y'all. Even though they're Night of the Living Dummy clones, like Slappy clones, and I think how they're dealt with in the episode is way more obvious. In the book, you just don't get to see them. And the whole mystery aspect is kind of, for nothing with them. Because they try to play up this mystery, right? But you already know that they have to be somewhat linked to being the lawn gnomes. In the episode, there's like one scene where Joe uncovers evidence with them, and then it goes right into the antics. And honestly, they're way scarier in the episode than the book. Even though the book, they have way more lawn gnomes, and if you see the twist, you know what I'm talking about. You have Hap and Chip, which are, kind of engaging villains. They don't really do much. They're not really all that threatening, but they're still engaging. In the episode, you have these unnamed lawn gnomes. You just have to assume that they're Hap and Chip. And I don't know. I just think they're scarier. I think what they're capable of doing actually shows some darker elements to their characters, especially by the ending twist in the episode. And the makeup looks great on them as well. This is straight up nightmare fuel. So they're kind of like the Haunted Mask, right? Where you already have a cool concept with a book, you have a cool concept for a villain, but the episode just takes that concept and elevates it with its makeup. And I think that Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes was able to do that with the Lawn Gnomes. So I'm going to give the edge for the Lawn Gnomes to the episode. So, that's essentially there. That's all we're going to talk about. Now let's talk about atmosphere. Now, both of these books are trying to emulate this summertime atmosphere with this competition. The book really tries to go into this whole plant competition, and it really is the core point of this book. You have this rivalry between Joe, and you have this rivalry, Joe's dad and Mr. McCall, and they go into about, planting plants in northern Minnesota, and there's like this stakes involved. There's like there's a tone. I guess we could talk about tone here after this. There's a little more stakes involved because there's more stress as the story goes along. And you get a lot of good, sceneries talking about, garden. It's very fluid in how it talks about summer in this book. I really appreciate that. The episode tries to do atmosphere well. It tries to do what the book was doing. They have some really cool looking lawns with lawn ornaments on it. For the most part, it's similar. But you don't really get that same atmosphere that the book can provide. So I actually give the edge to the book here for atmosphere. Honestly, both are pretty close, but I kind of appreciate the book's atmosphere a little more. I guess we'll talk about tone. I didn't really run that over. I just decided to do this last minute. But tone, I think in the episode there's a whimsical tone going on. Like these things are happening. Joe's dad. I guess we can kind of tie this to the competition, right? The competition here, it seems a lot more grander. It seems a lot more, like there's this element between this rivalry with the, Joe's dad and Mr. McCall that seems more important. So it seems there's like stakes. Here there's stakes, but you can't grasp the importance of it. And I think that's, that comes down to the tone. Like, if Joe does not solve the mystery in the book, Joe's dad can't win the competition. But in the book, things do happen in their own ways, and we'll get into that in just a minute. And there's no payoff with it. At least with the episode, there's a payoff. But, like I said, the tone, if I had a preference, I guess I'll give it to the book. I mean, I like the whimsical tone, but it just kind of comes off like I don't know how to explain it. Just take my word on it. The book has better tone. But let's get into aesthetics. Aesthetics here. So there are different aesthetics, right? And we can talk about these, and I think there's a couple. So one of the most obvious aesthetic changes here is that the mechanism that triggers the lawn gnomes to turn on and off, in the book, this is kind of spoilerish, so if you don't want to hear it, I'm sorry. In the book, it's a dog whistle. And in the episode, it's light. So there's like a gargoyle mechanism in the episode where light turns them to stone or ceramic, and then at night they come to life. In the episode, they come alive at night, and I don't know why they sleep during the day. Maybe because they could be seen. I don't know. But what makes them go to sleep is the dog whistle. Kind of random. If we're going on the mechanism that that can control them, it's more cut and dry in the episode, and it makes a lot more sense and less confusing. So I'll give the edge to the episode. And there's some aesthetics dealing with the competition. In the episode, it's more about just a garden presentation, about like how flowers are presented, lawn ornaments, all of this is being judged. And in the book, it's more about like what you grow, like who can grow the biggest plant and whatnot. And lawn ornaments aren't really being judged there. So why they're going to get lawn ornaments to spritzing up the garden, I couldn't tell you. But yeah, if we're going on that, I think that the episode has a better, just general approach to the competition, so I'll give the edge to the episode. Even though the book had more stakes with that, we'll get into that in the plot, I just think the episode just makes it less focused on the planting aspect and what's being grown and just more of the presentation. I find that more interesting. So that's why I'll give the edge to the episode. Now for the overall plot, these are almost two totally different plots when you think about it, but they still have the same rudimentary core. The book, you got these kids, they're playing ping pong one day, they see their dog out in the, roaming around Mr. McCall's garden. They try to go get the dog. They there's backstory about this, rivalry between Joe's dad and whatnot with Mr. McCall. And then the dad decides to go pick up lawn gnomes, and then the story carries on from there, from Lawn Lovelies, and there's a more, well, I guess an attempt at more mystery than the episode. There's more mystery, there's more stakes involved with this competition. The characters get progressively angrier as these shenanigans keep happening to them and ruining everybody's chances in the competition. And then, of course, when you get to see the lawn gnomes, they do their things. It happens in a whole different fashion. They go back to Lawn Lovelies. There's 600 or so lawn gnomes in there. You never get to see the payoff with this competition or these final few pranks these lawn gnomes do that are obvious and that should be addressed because they just destroyed other things that should be brought up but aren't. But that's essentially, that's one way you go here. Then the episode is just more basic. It's going, both kind of rob from Night of the Living Dummy, but this one's kind of more brazen about it. So, you got these two kids playing baseball one day. The neighbor, Mr. McCall, takes their baseball. Dad comes home, brings home in his truck some lawn gnomes for this gardening competition. Mr. McCall's kind of a jerk about it, makes some snarty, remarks about these lawn gnomes, and then his, plants get vandalized. He points the finger at Joe. Joe's getting blamed, and then he sees the lawn gnomes come to life, and then he gets caught by Mr. McCall, and he gets framed for destroying his garden, so now Joe has to repair the garden. So there are plot differences. In the book, Joe was going to be punished to help Mr. McCall plant some stuff that the lawn gnomes destroyed, and Mr. McCall's like, no, I don't want him in my garden. In the episode, he's more like about that, right? And then, of course, that whole Lawn Lovelies bit is taken out, so the lawn gnomes are more, it's just more of the two lawn gnomes, right? And then you have some random ones come out of the woods in the climax, and then what they do at the end of the story is dark, and it's not in the book. So the overall plot, right, I can appreciate a lot of things because in the episode version at least, with this whole competition, there's at least some payoff to this competition element. In the book, we didn't get that. But I don't feel like the stakes are really there in the episode. I don't really feel like I get that. And I get it from the book, and this is why it's so soul crushing in the book, right? If it at least had some wrap up with this storyline, this like core storyline about this competition, like what becomes of the competition, who wins, who loses, what becomes of Joe and Moose, because they're obviously going to be blamed for this, especially given the ending of the book about what happened to the Jeep and to the house. There's no resolution to any of that. And that's why this book got lower than just a 3 out of 5. It goes the extra mile to not answer those obvious things that the book was constantly talking about, and it just makes it feel like all for nothing. But there's stakes there. And if I had a preference, y'all, I don't know. I think the book had bigger potential with plot. But I think what we got as a result with the episode was just better. So judging on that, even though the episode's plot is more generic, more kind of wonkier in some ways, you don't really feel the elements of stakes, I still think the episode's plot is better. That's just me. And the episode wins out. Now the climax. The climax are two totally different things. The climax, essentially, in the book, Mindy comes outside after hearing Joe and Moose making clamor, and she gets abducted by lawn gnomes, and the lawn gnomes try to plead with Moose and Joe to follow them to Lawn Lovelies and release some of their friends so they can just, be peaceful and go live out in some forest somewhere. So these kids all fall for it, and they go to Lawn Lovelies, and they get ambushed by like 600 lawn gnomes, and then they have to go through this whole thing, and then they get rescued by Buster Cumming, and Joe gets the idea to use the dog whistle, and that helps solve the situation. In the episode, there's no Moose, there's just Joe, and Joe is being blamed for all this stuff, so he goes to his sister Mindy and says that, hey, you have to believe me, these lawn gnomes are moving around, and she goes outside with them, and they hear some whispering out in the woods, and they go out into the woods, and they find the lawn gnomes. They're with other lawn gnomes for some reason, and there's this big old climax where they're chased back to Mr. McCall's backyard, and they're about to be I don't know what the lawn gnomes are going to do with them, but Mr. McCall catches them, right? And in a lot of ways, it's not really as grand as the book's climax, but what happens as a result in the ending definitely makes this what happens here in the climax kind of interesting. But if I had a preference for climax, I think the book had a better setup with the 600 lawn gnomes. It was kind of unnerving to be trapped in there. Something about that's unnerving. And something also about the episode is unnerving, too. But I definitely think that the payoff is better than the climax in the episode. So I'll give the climax to the book. I think it's better. The 600 lawn gnome stuff being trapped in the basement was great. I loved it. Now for the ending. The ending twist on both books, right? On both products here. The book, the ending is after they wrap up at Lawn Lovelies, they escape and they make it home, presumably. And the next day, Joe's dad brings home something. that makes no sense compared to the rest of the book, and you get a dumb, silly, dumb ending. Here, you get an answer to what happens in the climax, and you see the competition people there judging Joe's family's garden, and they say, "What's this hideous thing in the garden?" And they go over to look and see what it is, and you find out what happened in the climax. I think, in terms of ending, the episode clearly wins. It has a better ending. It wraps up. It gives payoff to this whole competition element. It has a darker twist to it than the book. It's goofy and dumb, but it's actually scary at the same time. The book is just goofy and dumb. So, yeah, the episode has a better ending, y'all. So, now that we've run it all down, which one is better? The book or the episode? Now, I gave a lot to the book that I thought I would, comparatively. I gave the climax to the book. I think the book has a better climax. I think Joe's dad is better than in the book. I think the atmosphere is a bit better in the book. But other than that, everything else is just better. From plot, I mean, even though it's kind of more generic here in the episode, I think a lot of the core parts of the story, there's more payoff, like I said. I think better characters. There's a darker twist. It has a better ending. The makeup effects look great on the Lawn Gnomes. The Lawn Gnomes are my favorite part in either story, and the Lawn Gnomes are just put on a whole different level in the episode to me. And it comes off like nightmare fuel. And I think in terms of structure of story, I feel like the book was kind of bland and kind of meandered in the wrong areas too. Kind of going into more banter and stuff that really we never got to see really paid off. There are some things that get payoff, but not a lot. And the episode is just more cut and dry. It's way more simplified. The hamminess is there. I don't know. I think Charles Laser did a good job, and William Fruit did a good job directing it. To Charles Laser's writing. I'm sorry, y'all. Fumbling over my words. But if I had a preference, which one do I think is superior? I'm going to give it to the episode. The episode wins out to me. And it's probably by one of the biggest hairs I can possibly muster. This episode is fantastic. I mean, I like it. It's definitely flawed, but it's a classic to me. The book, not so much. It's not so much revered by me. But Goosebumps is a book franchise. Seriously, y'all. Go read Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes and then go watch the episode. You might like both. You might like the book more than the episode. You might like the episode more than the book. You might like them both equally. That's the beauty about Goosebumps. Go try them both out and see what you like. So that's my thoughts about Revenge of the Lawn Gnomes. Let me know down in the comment section down below. Do you like the book more? Do you like the episode more? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.